Here's your wrestling news for April 22nd, 2023, and we're kicking off with Smackdown as this week's show saw Riddle face Solo Sikoa, the man who put him out of action for months, in the main event. This match was a no disqualification match which saw the Usos appear at ringside, and you can probably guess what happened from there. Yes, as expected, the Bloodline stood tall at the end in an enjoyable main event, although one with an all-too-predictable result. For some reason, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn opted not to help their friend, and while we're big fans of Sikoa, every match of his, except his loss to Cody, has been predictable. We don't see anybody else getting singles victories over him, and the Usos' interference made the main event as cliche as any other Bloodline match, and WWE should strongly consider changing things up, as we are seeing too much of the same finish each week. This week's SmackDown also saw the build to WWE Backlash continue, and the card for this year's show has been more or less randomly put together. On the blue brand, it was announced that Seth Rollins will face Omos in Puerto Rico, in a match that has come as a surprise to everyone. The last time we saw Rollins in the ring, he was defeating The Miz in a barn burner on last week's Raw, and many expected that this could be the start of his move back into the title picture. Instead, he'll face Omos for the first time ever, and this isn't the only unique booking decision for the upcoming PLE. Bronson Reed and Bobby Lashley will both challenge US champion Austin Theory at Backlash, and while there is a bit of a link given that Lashley and Reed have been feuding, there's no mention of the US title being involved until now. SmackDown Women's Champion Rhea Ripley will defend against Zelina Vega, which at least makes some sense given that Vega is of Puerto Rican heritage, and that the Judgment Day and the LWO have been enemies for a couple of weeks. Even with that logic though, Vega and Ripley have hardly been at each other's throats, and it's just another sign of a thrown-together bout like the others we've discussed. But what do you think? Are you excited with this very random card that, for all we know, could see Hacksaw Jim Duggan face Nikita Lyons in an exploding barbed wire death match? Sound off in the comments. In a recent interview with Lightshed, WWE CEO Nick Khan said that cuts of at least $50 million will be made to WWE as part of the Endeavor deal that'll be finalized this year. Khan said in the interview that the production and creative side of things would not be affected in these cuts, but many in WWE aren't buying what the CEO is saying. According to Dave Meltzer on the Wrestling Observer newsletter, WWE talent are concerned backstage about their futures, and it's said that this is especially the case among talent Triple H rehired last year. Talent are right to be worried as reports have come out that at least 5 superstars are already on the chopping block, and you can find out who could be sent packing by clicking the link in the description field. Meltzer also pointed out that while numerous talents were signed by Triple H, there was no corresponding releases to balance the numbers out, and that the majority of Triple H hirings have actually been Division I college athletes on the developmental side. Many stars returned to WWE when Triple H took over as head of talent, and there have been some that have reportedly underwhelmed the game, and who do you expect to see released when these cuts happen after the WWE-UFC merger goes through? Two names who were rehired are Karrion Kross and Scarlett, who hinted at who they'll be targeting next on this week's SmackDown. In a segment, Kross noted that he had only gone after stars who were on the cards, while Scarlett made no attempt to hide the fact that Seth Rollins was at the front of his pack. Kross had never faced Rollins one-on-one in WWE, with the two men only ever colliding inside the Royal Rumble match, and it seems like the two will face off soon enough. Interestingly, Kross teased that he'll be targeting Shinsuke Nakamura after the latter's return to action last week, as Karrion and Scarlett will be kept plenty busy, judging by these segments. This week, Ted DiBiase Jr. was formally charged with several felonies related to a massive welfare fund fraud case, which is said to be the biggest in the history of Mississippi. It is alleged that DiBiase Jr. benefited from a scam in which money designated to help the most needy was wasted by those who were supposed to be helping, in a case his brother Brett has already pled guilty to. Now, Ted has been released from jail, and in his first comments after being released, told the local media that Jesus loves you, brother, and God bless you, man. In a statement, Ted's father, Ted DiBiase Sr., said that his family is navigating a difficult season and that he appreciates the prayers of others at this time. Ted also apologized for a recent tweet about his wrestling past, which some find wrong given the current situation, and explained that because of his busy schedule, he often has to schedule tweets in advance and is not ignoring the current situation, as some believed. The $1 Million Man is also said to have had a role in what happened, as his Christian ministry benefited greatly from the welfare fund, wherein his son Brett had a role in the Department of Human Services. If convicted of the 13 charges against him, Ted Dibiase Jr. is facing decades in prison, and we'll keep following the case against this former tag team champion as more comes out. It was during the April 10th edition of Raw that Lita was attacked backstage in an assault later revealed to have been conducted by Trish Stratus. Trish would confirm her heel turn later in the show by attacking Becky Lynch, and while a match between the two is scheduled for later this year, what's next for Lita? PW Insider noted that Lita is off WWE television at this point, and that the promotion has no creative plans for her to be used at this time. They note, "Lita has not been at any TV since she was attacked backstage at Raw. We haven't heard of any plans for her to be used going forward at this time, but one would think she'll be involved in the Trish Stratus story down the line. No one has told me this is the plan, but Trish vs. Lita as a nostalgia attraction fits into what Saudi Arabia usually wants for those pay-per-view events, so we'll have to see if they go in that direction as creative plans are locked in." WWE's plan for Stratus vs. Lynch is for the match to happen at SummerSlam, so the promotion has about 4 months of programming to fill, which is plenty of time to do something with Lita. Well, it's been nice to see Lita return to WWE television and have one more title run. It seems that her time is done for now, but don't count her out appearing as part of this feud later this year. What do you think is next for Lita? Do you think she'll be back in time for Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia, or perhaps later as we approach SummerSlam? Sound off in the comments. Now, this week's Smackdown came and went without an appearance by Charlotte Flair, who hasn't been seen since her title loss to Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania 39. We now know why Flair has been away, as PW Insider reports that she and her husband Andrade have been planning some international travel, and that they have recently been in Hawaii. There's no word on when Flair will be back on WWE TV, but for the time being, the Queen is enjoying some rest and relaxation away from the ring. If reports are to be believed, CM Punk is on his way back to AEW, despite everything that happened at All Out and his recent controversy on Instagram. Punk hasn't been seen on AEW TV since September, and his face was even covered on a production truck during a segment with the Elite. But when exactly will we see him again? In the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it's reported that Punk will return on June 17th, which is a Saturday, so the date will likely be the premiere of AEW Collision. Not only will Punk be back, but he'll be returning in the United Center in his hometown of Chicago, Illinois, so expect the former world champion to get a huge ovation. The decision for Punk to return was made many weeks ago, and while the Observer did state that there was a snag 2 weeks back, that has evidently now been worked out. It's been reported that Punk has been pitching his return feud to be against the Elite, and it'd certainly make sense given what happened last September. It's also been stated that Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks have hardly been thrilled with the idea of working with Punk, and the two sides are far from making amends. In the Observer, it's stated that Punk has not apologized or attempted to make any direct amends to the Young Bucks, though sources close to Punk claim he was told not to contact the former tag champions. Even if he were allowed to reach out, there's no guarantee Punk would say sorry for what happened, as it's no secret that Punk has a lot of pride, which can get him into trouble. This time last month, the notion of Punk returning seemed improbable, but he's on his way back, proving that you can never say never in the world of pro wrestling. More from Smackdown now, and too often we see heels use the fact that referees are a bit dim to their advantage, so it was refreshing this week to see a face tag team use this tactic. During the women's tag title match, Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez used a blindside moment to get the win and retain their titles against Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville. It wasn't necessarily a great match, but the finish was really good, and we appreciated the fun water spot involving Morgan and Green. Green may not be picking up too many wins upon her return to WWE, but she is proving to be a hit every time she's on screen, and this week was no exception. SmackDown also saw Xavier Woods get his first shot at the Intercontinental Championship ever, and he instantly proved why he belongs in the title picture. To be fair, he was working with one of the very best in the WWE today, that being Gunther, who proceeded to have another excellent match, this time with the New Day star. Xavier Woods has spent almost the entirety of his main roster run vehemently in the tag team division, but with what we've seen, don't count out him one day being Intercontinental Champion, even if this week wasn't his time. Do you think Woods could be Intercontinental Champion material, and what do you want to see next from Gunther after his latest defense? Sound off in the comments below.